All right, you're on.
Well, good evening. Welcome to First Friday. And tonight happens to be Good Friday, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about some of the things that the church says you should do on Good Friday, and some of those things are things you should just do every day. You don't need Good Friday to do these things. We're also going to talk about the trial of the Pharisees. Has anybody ever heard of the trial of the Pharisees? No, we're going to show the unseen trial of the Pharisees, which runs parallel to the trial of Jesus. It's all along the same time that he was here. And you're going to find out that the Pharisees, all the way along, while they're having a trial of Jesus and they're berating Jesus, they're doing all these things to Jesus, they are, in fact, in a trial themselves, and they're going to lose. So, we're going to start out in 1 Peter 2:24. It's going to say, "And he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sin and live to righteousness, for by his wounds we were healed." This basically explains part of why Jesus was here. There's many reasons why Jesus came. This is a big part of it right here. And that verse tells us that he bore our sins, right? And that we might live to righteousness, and for as by his wounds we were healed. We're going to take what Jesus did, and it's going to apply to us. It's going to take our own lives, if we believe, and we're going to be declared righteous. Now, but that's not the only reason why Jesus was here. Jesus was here for a lot of reasons. He says he was here to judge. He's here, he's going to tell a lot of what people are doing wrong. It's not just about him coming here and dying on the cross and everything's fine. No, everything wasn't fine. Jesus didn't come here because things were fine. Let's go back and look at some of the things that happened. You have Noah. 1 righteous and 7 others were saved. 1 and 7, right? It's telling you one guy was righteous. Does that tell you there's a problem? Lot. Lot leaves Sodom and Gomorrah. Everybody else killed except him and 3 others? 2 others. 3. There was one got lost on the way, right? Turned to salt. So, we know there's another problem. You had 100,000, probably 100,000 people there, all gone. So there is a problem. So between the book of Malachi and the coming of Christ, there was about 400 years. Where are they wrote about? There's none in our Bible. God was silent. The Jews, the Pharisees. Yes, sir.
Isn't there something like First and Second Maccabees that's like outside of the biblical?
I mean in the Bible. I mean in our Bible.
Oh yeah. Well,
so for 400 years, our Bible says God was silent, right? Didn't have anything to say. But they all thought there was nothing wrong. How far from the case. Let's just say you're in a river, and you're standing at a river, and you're standing on the bank. Do you need to be saved? No. You're standing on the bank, everything's fine. The guy out in the water, who's going under the water, he gets saved. He needs to be saved. He's drowned. If you send Jesus to save the world, wouldn't we say that somebody's drowning, something's wrong? We're not going to say something's right. So the Jews thought they were doing good. The religious leaders, Pharisees, they thought, God's not saying anything, nothing's wrong, we're fine. That's not the case. Because you're going to see here that Jesus is going to tear into these guys like nobody's business. And they're not doing almost anything right by what he says. So there's a problem. That's why he came. And he came not just to sit here and say, well, I'm going to die on the cross and you're going to be saved. It's going to tell you, you guys have done a lot of things wrong, and we're going to address those before I ever get to the cross. So it's not just about, I'm coming here, I'm going to die on the cross, and the rest of you all are forgiven. We have the same thing going on today. We're going to get to that. So in Isaiah 53:5 it says, "But he was pierced through our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening for our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. It's the same thing the first verse basically says. Look, y'all in trouble, you've been in trouble, and you're going to be in trouble. And I'm coming because of the trouble. Now, I'm going to give my life and I'm going to save you, but I'm here because of the trouble. Because you have gone astray, the sheep. He's not saying he's here because everything was fine. So Philippians 2:8 says, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even on the cross. This is what about these verses are all about what Good Friday is about. Now, Jesus is going to have to suffer a lot of things and do a lot of things before we ever get to the cross. The cross is just, that trial that day is just a little part of all the abuse he suffers. He suffers abuse all the way from the time he comes to the time he leaves. That's all it is, basically. Jesus gets abused. Along the way, some people believe it and some don't. But basically, he goes toe-to-toe with the religious leaders all the time. And what he's doing is, and we'll get to this later about the trial, he's gathering evidence against them. Okay, so John 19:30 says, therefore when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, it is finished, and he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. That's Good Friday to God. That's what it is. All of those verses apply to it. Now, I want to talk about for a minute, what is Good Friday to the church, which is going to be a kind of a totally different thing. Good Friday, first we're going to get into the names of Good Friday. You're going to like this. So Good Friday, also known as Holy Friday, Great and Holy Friday, or Friday of the Passion of the Lord, Black Friday, Long Friday, Grief Friday, and part of the Paschal, I can't pronounce this last word, Triduum? Can't pronounce that last word. It's part of a whole week of stuff that happens. So we got about, what do we got, about 10 names? What a mess. You can't even decide on one name. Now, we look at it as a solemn Christian holiday commemorating the crucifixion of Christ and his death at Calvary. For us, but it's a solemn day, but here's one of those things diametrically opposed you talk about. The cross is a solemn day. You think of Jesus on the cross, you go, man, all the torturing. But at the same time, can't you think he did this to save us? And you have what? You have not joy of him dying, but joy of what he did. And then you have, and people always say, well, you can't have free will and 100% sovereignty. I just showed you can have joy and sorrow looking at the same thing. God can do this, and he does it all the time. Nothing is impossible for God, but our limited minds, we don't even realize that that's what's going on in our minds, that we can look at that cross and see both things. The sacrifice of Jesus, the great thing he did for us. And at the same time, you want to cry because of what they did to him. You have both. People say that can't happen, how blind they are. They just don't see the power of God. They don't see that God can do anything. They put God in a box, limited by time, space, and matter, and that's the way they want to look at it. And that's why Jesus said, you guys are blind. You claim to see, but the more you see, the blinder you get. Because you're not looking with spiritual eyes. You're looking through the eyes of man. Oh, that's impossible. Man's logic says that can't be done. I give up on man's logic. There is none. So, they have 10 different names. Good Friday's not mentioned in the Bible. These are terms developed by the church centuries after the texts were written. And they're for the church. Just remember, they're for the church. They're for those bodies of people that want to go there. They're the CEO Christians that Christmas and Easter only. The CEO Christians, they love that stuff. They know to go to church. Hey, Good Friday, we got to go to church. Okay, well, you just missed the last 52 weeks, so you got 1 out of 52. Good odds. So the Bible does not explicitly command or any specific annual observance of Good Friday, but the church lists a lot of things to do. I was going to put up a thing from the Catholic Church. They have 25 different things. It won't fit on that board. There's so many. And if you did them all by the end of the day, you would be exhausted. You would be done. They have things. You got to walk so far. You got to eat this. You got to do that. You got to putt a foot. No, maybe not putt a football. I don't think that's in there. It might be. The Baptists have some things. One of the things they have is, this is a good one. It's called Tenebrae. It's the service of darkness, where scripture is read and candles are progressively put out until the room is in complete darkness. And then I guess the study's over at that point because you can't read anymore, right? But they actually have that. They actually do that. As far as I know, I can't find that anywhere in the Bible. I can't find a lot of things that they say to do. We'll start with fasting and abstinence. So, for Catholics, this is a mandatory day of fasting. Now, they said fasting, but then it actually says this in the it says 1 full meal and 2 smaller meals and abstinence from meat for those days. And it's only for ages 18 to 59. Okay, they have an age limit there. So,
You guys are safe.
okay, then they have the Good Friday service. You attend a service for 3 hours between noon and 3. They have Stations of the Cross, prayer for mediation on the 14 steps of Christ's final journey. I guess they knew he took exactly 14 steps. I didn't count them, and I don't see that in Scripture that there was 14. Now, I could be wrong. It might be there somewhere, but I don't see it. So, also, I want to make a point about fasting with the Catholic Church. They tell you to fast, and in this sheet I have, it's so funny, because then they tell you later, they say fast the whole day, and then about 10 things down it says eat traditional foods like hot cross buns. Now, I got a question. If you're fasting, how do you eat the traditional foods? I can't figure that one out. But that's what it's on there. I have the list of 25 if anybody wants to see it. So these are the things that they say to do. Quiet reflection, avoid unnecessary distractions, and quiet in the home. Charity and service, engaging in acts of service to honor Christ's sacrifice. Now, I'm fine with that, but that's an everyday. You could do that every day. It doesn't have to be Good Friday. Why are you telling people, hey, go do this today? Say, how about this? On Good Friday rest, go do these the other 300 and, how many days are there in a year? 365?
64.
Whatever, 64. Go do them the other 364. Try that. Why not do that? Rather than be the CEO. Traditional food. Okay, eating hot cross buns. We went over that. Now, it says veneration of the cross, a service where believers show respect to the cross as a symbol of sacrifice. I'm fine with that too, but you can do that every day. Aren't we supposed to pick up our cross daily? Daily. This is once a year. I find it hard that they justify some of this with go do it once a year. And this is not just Catholic Church. Look, I'm mixing in Methodist things, Protestant things. There's a lot of there were so many I didn't want to list them all from all the churches. Usually they have about 4. Each church has about 4, maybe 5. Catholics have about 50. I don't know. It says, and I'm the only one with a black shirt. No, Sonia. You're supposed to wear black today, so you guys all go home, get your black stuff on, and come back. Because it says solemnity, wear black.
You're good.
So,
That's good.
Got some black.
Pretty good. Terry's good.
the Bible does not command you to do any fasting or abstinence of meat. This is what the Bible says about it. Matthew 15:11 says, it is not what enters the mouth that defiles the man, but what proceeds out of the mouth. This defiles the man. There's only one day in the Bible that talks about fasting where you should fast, and that is the day, what is it, Atonement Day? Is it a Day of Atonement? That's the only time you're called to fast. Now, you can fast. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But there's also a point here I want to make too. Fasting without prayer, meditation, and scripture reading
It's a waste of time.
is just a diet. All it is, just a diet. So, You can eat meat if you want to. But here's some of the things what not to do with your mouth on any day and Good Friday. How about 2 Timothy 2:14? But avoid worldly and empty chatter, for it will lead to further ungodliness. Now, that's pretty easy. I'll kind of scrunch this verse up. The more you talk, the worse it gets, unless you're talking about God. That's it. The more you talk, the worse it gets. Leviticus 19:16 says, you shall not go out as a slanderer among your people. How about this? Quit lying about everybody you know. That's what that means. Just stop it. Then 1 Timothy 5:13 says, at the same time they also learn to be idle as they go around from house to house, and not merely idle, but also gossips and busybodies, talking about things not proper to mention. What's he talking about? Stop the filth coming out of your mouth. Stop the sexual talk. You can't be sitting there having all the filth jokes, all that. Abstain for those groups where they're doing that. That's a good way to, fasting, you don't have to fast, but you do have to do these things. Like I said, you're not legally required to fast except on specific days, the Old Testament Day of Atonement. Now, how you should fast and why you should. How you should. Well, Matthew 6:16 says, so no one should notice whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they neglect their appearance so that they will be noticed by men that they are fasting. Truly I say unto you, they have their reward in full. That's self-explanatory, right? But when you fast, anoint your head with oil and wash your and wash your face so that you fasting will not be noticed by men, but by your Father who is in secret. But by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what in secret will reward you. There you go. Do it. Don't let everybody know it. Don't look like you're doing it. Just do it. And do it in the proper way, because otherwise, as he's saying, it means nothing to God if you're not. If you want to do something, and you're going to do it wrong, and it's not worth it, God doesn't see it, why even bother doing it? Reasons why. You draw closer to God. Psalms 35:13 says, I humble my soul with fasting, and my prayer returning to my bosom for guidance and wit. Now, I humble my soul with fasting. Look at that. There's a benefit of doing it. And it's something that if you do it properly, you're going to humble your soul. That's going to stop you from a lot of problems. Isn't pride one of the major, your pride is one of the major things. God chose Moses. Why? Because he was so humble. Moses was one of the most humble man, if not the most humble man in the world at that time. So, if it worked for Moses, right? If humbleness worked for Moses, I kind of look at it and go, aren't we supposed to have some of these people as examples? Fasting is for guidance, wisdom, and repentance. You'll get all those things out of fasting if it's done properly. Joel 2:12 says, Yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart and with fasting and weeping and mourning. Fasting will help you return to God. He says so right there. You want to show remorse and sorrow for sin, fast and pray. God's going to hear you when you do this. That's what he just said. And times of disconnect, fasting and prayer bring you closer to God. So does reading scripture, but fasting is really, if you can overcome the part of being hungry and concentrate on the Lord, it's almost the same as like when you run a marathon and you come to that point where your feet don't want to move no more and you work through it. Eventually, if you fast long enough, you'll start getting hungry. And if you fight it and you stay with the Lord through that, you will gain a closer relationship with God from it. So you focus heavily on prayer. Oh, and most important, no meat on Good Friday. I hope y'all didn't eat meat because you're in trouble. Sorry.
I eat mostly grain.
Quiet reflection. Quiet reflection in the Bible focuses on finding peace, fostering trust in God, and pausing from life's busyness to be still. Isaiah 30:15 says, "For thus the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, has said, repent and rest. You will be saved. In quietness and trust is your strength." You know, let your mind clear. Focus on God, and the busyness of life will get you, it will separate you from God. We've been over this, Mike and Kenny been over this time and time again, especially Mike, on all of the stuff going on out there has nothing to do with God. Has nothing to do with Him. Probably a lot of our day is stuff that we look at, and if we can't focus on God and do that, we're shot, because a lot of our day is spent doing a lot of things that have nothing to do with God. And we have to try to focus while we're doing something else. We have to focus in on God. You have a thing you're doing here. But those distractions are going to stop you from finding that quietness. Jesus said, "My peace I give to you." But He didn't say you'd use it. He said He gives it to you, but you have to actually put that into effect. God tells you here, you in quietness and trust is your strength. Let it go. Calm down in life. So He wants you to meditate day and night. Now, this is something that all the churches said to do on Good Friday. Meditate day and night. Well, we're supposed to meditate every day. We know this. 1 Timothy 4:15 says, "Take pain with these things. Be absorbed in them so that your progress will be evident to all." Wow. So you meditate, you draw closer to God, and people are going to see it in you. They're going to see it. They're going to see by your knowledge of God's going to grow. All of these things are going to happen. If you meditate on the Word and you know less, there's a problem. How could that happen? If you meditate on God's Word, what are you going to know? You should know more about God. Well, hopefully. So, I want to talk about a little bit about it's a couple of secular things that are going to tell you that doing these things is going to help you. Now, it doesn't help everybody. So, we need to have total focus, immersed in dedication, commitment, and wholly engaged. Now, I'm going to tell you, people are notorious for quitting things, starting something and quitting. 1 out of every 10,000 people who start martial arts becomes a black belt. Because someone who trains karate doesn't mean they are a martial artist. Because you train karate, that doesn't mean you're wholly immersed in being a martial artist, right? Someone will study Christianity, but that doesn't make them a Christian. Ask Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman's not a Christian, knows more about the Bible than probably, I don't know, maybe more than all of us put together. He knows a lot. Let's just put it that way. But he doesn't know that he's supposed to be a Christian. How do you like that? He knows the Bible backwards and forwards, but he doesn't know he's supposed to serve God. He missed a lot of it somewhere. There's a guy who knows a lot, but he knows nothing. He knows how to read a book. Simply studying doesn't do it. Prayer, fasting, meditation, hearing and walking the way of Christ. So, and we should focus on the cross and the suffering of Christ. This is every day. This is not just something, and the Catholic Church says, hey, you should do this. Well, every day you should do that. Luke 9:23 says, and he was saying to them all, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. You should follow Christ, putting all his teaching above personal and worldly gain. Now, there's also costly discipleship. Discipleship is costly. Luke 14:26 says, "And if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father, mother, and wife, and children, and brother, and yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." Pretty much explains it. You're going to have a lot of things that you're going to be asked to do to be a Christian. Do them, don't do them. God's going to open up the book and he's going to look. We're going to get into the trial here in a minute, the trial of the Sadducees. But I want you to think of it too as your own trial. Because we're going through it right now. What does it say? That every word out of your mouth, I'm paraphrasing, you'll be responsible for it. Well, when is that? And who's keeping track of it? Well, God's gathering evidence. Eventually you're going to appear before a judge. You're going to have a trial. You may not look at it that way, but it's going to happen. Luke 14:33 says, "So none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions." If you got something more important than God and you don't get rid of it, you're going to have a problem. Now he says all his own possessions, and I'm not going to get into it because I can't explain this. This is a lot deeper than, do you have to just take everything off and walk around naked? I don't think that's what he means. Now, I can't explain that now. I don't have time, but I don't think that's what it means. I think more if we look at Matthew 16:26, it said, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what would a man give in exchange for his soul?" Well, the answer to that question, the first part is, what would profit a man if he gains the whole world? Well, it would profit him nothing, correct? The answer is nothing and everything, right? The second part is, what would a man give in exchange for his soul? Well, everything. Now, this method of the question it's basically teaching by interrogation. Jesus is going to ask a question that he knows you have to know the answer to. If you have any other answers and nothing and everything, you're just wrong. That's all it is. So Jesus is going to ask a question, and the answer to the question was the lesson he desired to teach you. Right? He wanted you to know that you can't profit anything more. And at the same time, what would you get? Well, you give everything. He's telling you your life, everything. He's giving you and he's teaching the lesson he desired, that you have to give up everything and there's nothing more valuable than God. Jesus asked a way for only one answer to be given then. Well, sorry, one correct answer to be given. You could always answer whatever you feel like. I mean, people do that every day. That doesn't mean, when my point is that Jesus is asking this question, if he asks this to a believer, that answer, there's only one correct answer for that question. There's not a whole bunch. It's only one. Actually, in this case, there's two correct answers, but you get my point. It's one. One answer to the question. So, lawyers use two kinds of questions, interrogating and information. Interrogative questions are commonly known as leading questions, and the cardinal rule of cross-examination is to never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. So here's the thing. Jesus obviously knows all the answers before he even asks. So the second kind of question doesn't really apply to him, but I'm going to mention it anyway because you'll see in the Pharisees that they're going to use this. And just to add, information questions, usually only in distribution, are to get an answer to be checked for fact later to be used as deemed. So they'll ask you a question that they don't know the answer to, then they'll fact check you later, and if you lied, they'll come back with that question under direct questioning, and now you got caught in a lie because in deposition you would have said one answer and trial another, and you're out. Okay, so how does that apply to what I'm talking about? Well, the last part of this study is about the trial of the Pharisees and the other religious leaders, not just the Pharisees. But it's an unseen trial. Nowhere in the Bible does it mention the trial of the Pharisees. But it's there. And nonetheless, God sent Jesus for a purpose, right? But that was not the only purpose. If we limit God to saying that Jesus just came here for this, to accomplish this one thing, we really put God in a box. You don't think God can do 4 or 5 things at once? He's got billions of things going on at once. This is just, he's going to use their trial of Jesus to be their trial. They're going to be put on trial. And the thing is, they're going to get every piece of what they deserve here. It's not going to go their way really any step of the way. It's going to be bad for them. And Jesus warns them and tells them, and they still keep doing it, and they go down this direction. So, to have a trial, right, you have to have charges, accusations, right? You have to have evidence and testimony. That's your trial. And you have to have a judge. You have to have conviction, sentence, and punishment. That's a trial. Right? That's what it all encompasses. So, now, there's going to be, okay, so Jesus is going to use those 2 types of questions to gather evidence against all who participated in his trial. That's what he's doing. It was their trial as well. So Matthew 26:2 says, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming. The Son of Man is to be handed over for crucifixion. Now, in this, there's no trial mentioned, no charges, but a sentence already, because this is at the beginning. This was one of the first mentions of what's going to happen. But they're not mentioned in a trial. He's going to be handed over for crucifixion. No trial. No, actually, there's not really a sentence. The sentence has already been, see, Jesus' trial wasn't really a trial. You know what it was? It was a prophecy completed. That's what it was. You could call it a trial, but it all went to the script that God had already set out. This was going to happen. This was going to happen. He's going to go to the cross, and he's going to, after 3 days, going to be, right? We know that is already been foretold. So, is it a trial, or is it just completion of a prophecy? You make up your own mind. Because the trial I see isn't a trial. It's a farce. So, now we're going to keep reading. We're on verse 3 now. Then the chief priest and the elders of the people were gathered together in the court of the high priest named Caiaphas, and they plotted together to seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. Okay, here we go again. You see any mention of a trial? No trial, no witnesses. They're just completing the same thing. Their plan is to seize Jesus by stealth, meaning they don't even want to really walk up and arrest him. They want to get him from behind, and then they want to kill him. Doesn't sound to me like they're going to have a trial or anything, right? So John 11:49 says, but one of the Caiaphas, who was high priest. So from John 11:53 says, so from that day on, they planned to kill him. Once again, they planned to kill him. It doesn't say they planned to have a trial, find him guilty, and sentence him. It just says kill him. John 7:19 says, did not Moses give you the law and that none of you carries out the law? Why do you seek to kill me? The crowd answered, you have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Did we just say they're plotting to kill him already, right? They've already said they're going to kill him. Now they're asking him, they say, you have a demon? Who wants to kill you? John 7:25, we're skipping down a little bit, says some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, is this not the man they were seeking to kill? Well, these are different people. Then they already know that they're planning to kill him. They still haven't talked anywhere about a trial yet. This is still early on, right? These people already know they're planning to kill him, but these aren't the ones that are carrying out the plot, but they already know. Funny, because they just said earlier that who seeks to kill you? They're asking him, then they're turning around and saying, well, we already know that they want to kill you. We asked you first, who seeks to kill you? They don't make any sense there, but they already know. They're trying to say, you have a demon. You have a demon, but you're the one saying, not even a few verses later, you're saying, is this not the man who seeks to kill? But you called him a demon. Now you're saying, is this not the man they seek to kill? Those people, they're just lying. They already started lying here. You can see something doesn't make sense there, right? Verse 28 says, then Jesus cried out in the temple, teaching and saying, wait a minute, I missed the verse. Oh, Jesus is saying to them again. So they were seeking to seize him, and no one laid his hand on him. These are the same people. Now they're looking to seize him, but they can't get him. There's three different stories going on within a few verses, right? They just want to kill him. Let's just get it out there. They don't care about what they say or anything. The lies, they just want to kill him. And that's what they're going to do. So, we're going to skip down. We're on John 8:30. As he spoke these things, many came to believe him. Verse 31. Believe in him. So Jesus was saying to the Jews who had believed him, watch, if you continue in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Now, okay, so I'm in... Sorry, John 8:30. I gotta find it. I gotta read it. So, okay, here we go. So now I want to read until, so I was on 8:30. I want to read until 8:37. So 8:30. Okay. And he spoke these things. Many came to believe in him. Now watch. Jesus therefore was saying to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Then they answered him, we are Abraham's offspring, and we had never been a slave to anyone. How is it that you say you shall become free? Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin, and the slave does not remain in the house forever, the son remains in the house forever. If therefore the Son shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. Now watch. I know that you are Abraham's offspring, yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. These are the ones, the same people. He's talking to the same people from back verse 30, right? And what did they say? Or verse 19. He's talking to the same people. This is a continuous conversation. What did they do? They said, why do you seek to kill me? You have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Right? Then we went into, is this not the man? Right? Same people. They were seeking to kill. It's the same people he's talking to. So it goes on. It keeps going on. Then they tried to seize him. Now he tells him here, he said, You guys believe me somewhere along the line. They believed him, right? Because that's what it says. It says, and he spoke those things, many came to believe in him. And it says, therefore Jesus was saying to the Jews who had believed him, he's talking to them still. Now he says to them, I know that you are Abraham's offspring, yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. Think about this. Have you ever heard of somebody who say they believe in God, but they don't practice anything of my word it didn't root in you. You believe what I said, but it didn't root. Now you're going to want to kill me because my word didn't stay in you. The same people who are lying about all this stuff, right? They did believe what he said, but it didn't take root. Now, Jesus has a parable about it. Later, the parable of the sower, you can read it and you can see where this comes from, right? Then we're going to go on. We are now down to verse 38, right? Okay, so I spoke these things which I have seen with my Father, therefore you also do the things which you heard from your father. Two separate. My father, your father. Not the same father. Jesus is making a separation to these people now. So, now, mind you, okay, let's move on. They answered and said to him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you are Abraham's children, do the deeds of Abraham. Another player is revealed here. Because they're saying, Abraham is our father. And Jesus is saying, Another player's here. Who's the other father? We'll get to that. But another player is in this game now. And it's their father. And it's not Abraham. Because he just said, if you were Abraham's children, do the deeds of Abraham. Because you're not. You're trying to kill me. You already said it. You tried to seize me. But as it is, you are seeking to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. This Abraham did not do. You are doing the deeds of your father. They said to him, we are not born of fornication. We have one father, even God. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I have proceeded forth and have come from God, for I have not even come on my own initiative, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I am saying? It is because you cannot hear my word. Jesus is telling them, you simply aren't listening to me. My mouth's moving. You may have heard it, but you're not listening. You don't hear my word. You're going against what I say. You're not of Abraham, because Abraham wouldn't do this. So who is their father? Well, he's going to tell you. You are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. We got the father now, their father. He just said, you are of your father. So now Jesus is telling these people who may have believed in him for a minute, you can't accept my word, but you're liars and murderers. This is going to become a big thing later, because in the trial of Jesus, you're going to see that they are liars and murderers. It's going to come out. Because what are they going to do? What do they do about Jesus? They lie. What do they ended up doing to him? They murder him. Now, we're going to get to that, because there's two ways of looking at that as Jesus being murdered. And we're going to get to both of them. So, they accused Jesus twice of having a demon. They attempted to stone him without trial, right? Now, here's the guys against Christ. These are going to be the perpetrators of the crime against Jesus that they are going to get charged with later. The devil. Some believing and non-believing Jews. Remember, these people believed in him. Now they switched over, but they were believing. Believing and non-believing Jews are responsible. Pharisees, Sadducees, the Sanhedrin. Is that right? Sanhedrin? And the high priest. All of these were trying to murder him. So, if we go to Matthew 23:13, this is an interesting thing. You want charges against the Jews? Here they come. You want charges against the Pharisees and the priests? They're gonna come right here. Jesus is going to start listing things that these guys have done, and there's going to be a lot of them. I'm not going to read through them all because the charges would take the whole hour and a half, 2 hours we have. Just to read the charges that should be put on these, I don't know what to call them. You can't, no nice names, that's for sure. So 23:13. Jesus is going to lay out some charges and evidence of the trial they don't see coming. It says, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from men, for you do not enter in yourselves, and you do not allow those who are entering to go in." They are like the guards of the gate. Right? They stop you from finding spirit to spirit. They stop you. They get in the way. I thought they were the religious leaders. Aren't they the ones who are supposed to bring you to God? Verse 14, watch this. "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you devour women's houses, even for a pretense. You make long prayers, therefore you shall suffer greater condemnation." What are you going to say? They steal the houses. How about that? Isn't that what he means? You devour them, you just steal them. That's what you're doing. You take them from them. "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees," verse 15. "Hypocrites, because you travel on land and sea, on sea and land, to make one, proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourself." So we already have them guarding the gate. And then when they do bring somebody in, they don't bring them into heavenly things. They bring them into hell. Well, didn't we just decide that they were of their father, the devil, and they're doing the things that the devil has them do? Well, they're not going to convert anybody to God. That's not what they do. What does it say? How Satan cannot cast out Satan. You can't stand in a house divided. If these people were liars and murderers and of Satan, well, who are they bringing in? They're not going to bring them into God. They're going to bring them into where? Where their father's at, into that group. Can't you see that when Jesus came, the whole world was a mess. It wasn't like these guys were doing anything right. He's pointing out these charges to you right now. Okay, so verse 16. Verse 16, "Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, that is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obligated." Nice. Well, worshiping money, gold of the temple. Correct me if I'm wrong, but once Jesus started his ministry, he never again touched money, right? I don't find it anywhere, right? Did Jesus ever again touch money after? I know there's a fish and a coin, but he didn't touch that coin, right? When did he ever touch money again? I don't remember, but I don't find it. Before then, he was a carpenter, so he probably got paid somewhere along the line for that. But once he started ministry, he never touched money again. If somebody can find it, let me know, because I haven't found it where it says he touched money. But these guys are all about money. They already stole the widows' houses, and now they're talking about money here again, that he has problems with them about money. You fools and blind men, which is more important, the gold or the temple that sanctioned the gold? Once again, we're into money. But simply speaking, whenever money's involved, go the opposite direction. You ain't gonna find God with the money. That pretty much determines where you're at. You go to a church is all rich, you probably ain't gonna find God. Really, to tell you the truth, you're not. The richest pastors are probably the worst. Worst I've ever seen. Name one that's really rich that was really good. I'd have a hard time. Maybe you can. I know the richest ones that I know of are, what? Yes, sir.
Explain to his dad.
Yeah, but Kitty doesn't play rich.
I wish I was rich.
Okay, so we're gonna skip down to verse 23 where it says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness, but these are the things you should have done without neglecting others." I got a few to add to that. How about you don't lie? How about if you don't steal? How about if you don't murder? All the things Jesus said earlier. How about those are the weightier things of the law that you aren't doing? When I researched this, if you get into how many of the 10 commandments they broke, just the ones that are easy, that stand out, there's like about half of them. That they just broke. And these are the religious leaders. These are supposed to be the good guys. Guys that say the law of Moses is us and Moses is our guy and we do everything. No. You do part of it. Jesus has said the important things, the things you should do, you do good with a little bit of this and that. But the big things like lying, murdering, stealing, no, those you don't pay attention to. Plus, here's one. How do you like this? Faithfulness. You're not faithful to anybody. And mercy? You have no mercy? That's going to come about. Now remember, these are things that Jesus is going to make charges to these people. You're not merciful. You're not faithful. Those are going to come up. These are charges, evidence against these guys. This is part of their trial. He's producing evidence right now. Oh, they also have robbery, self-indulgence, and being unclean. That's a good one because they're so big about being clean. Jesus is telling them, no, you're unclean. You guys are unclean. So, verse 31. Yeah. So, within here, they're going to get called serpents and, well, that's a little bit down further. So consequently, you bear witness against yourselves. Now they're telling on themselves. They bear witness against themselves that you are sons of those that murdered the prophets. What he's saying here is, you're witness against yourself, and here's another thing. You're no different. You're the same as your fathers, your worldly fathers, and guess what? Satan. He said you are your father, the devil, but you also are the same as your worldly fathers. They did it, and you're okay with it. Remember, they built the tombs, right, for them to bury the body. And Jesus said, you testify against yourself. You built these tombs that you consent to what they did. Meaning, you're no different than they were. Like father, like son. Like Satan, like you guys. So, now, okay, verse 34. Verse 34 is a big one. This is where Jesus is going to call them out for some of the things that they actually did with their own hands. It says, therefore, behold, I am sending you prophets and wise men and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in the synagogues and persecute from city to city. That upon you may fall the guilt of all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, to the son of, Barak, Who can pronounce that? Berechiah. Whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Did he just say they murdered somebody? Murder. Not killed righteously like in a war, not any, murdered them. These are the Pharisees and these are the religious guys. Now, scourge, persecute, kill, crucify. Does this sound familiar? What happened to Jesus?
Same.
Bingo. Same thing. He's already telling them, I'm one of these guys that you're going to do it too. We'll get to that, but he's already just told them about what they're going to do to him. They already tried to kill him. Right? They already tried to seize him. They've already tried to stone him. And we're not even to the actual trial yet. They've done all this. Does that seem right to you? Is there any trial that you've ever heard of? Anybody that you've ever heard this happening to? I mean, I know the police have beat some people, and that happens, right? But then they also try to stone them, kidnap them. There's just so much going on here. And these guys are the guys that are initiating all this. Now, Jesus is going to make a point. John 5:45. Let's go there real quick, because I want to get this part about accusations going here. So, Jesus says, do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you, now we have an accuser, right? For these charges that are going against the Pharisees. The accuser is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. Set your hope. Sorry, I didn't write that part. For if you believe Moses, you would believe me. For if you believe Moses, you would... I read it twice. I wrote it twice. So if you believe Moses, you would believe me. For he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? Now we have an accuser. We have Moses. They're accused. This is good. They're accused by the book of the law of Moses, who they say we are, right? They say Abraham, and they say Moses is our teacher. They've said Moses is the guy for them, right? The book of the law. And Moses is turned around and going to be the one accusing them with all this. Their guy is the one accusing them. And Jesus has said, do not think I will accuse you. Moses accuses you. You've already been accused. I'm here because I delivered evidence, right? You just saw all the evidence. He told them you're murderers. He told them all these things. You steal, you lie, you do all these things, right? So there's your charges all laid out and part of your evidence, but there's more. There's going to be more evidence here. The Jewish law says there's got to be 2 witnesses, right? Right? Is that what Jewish law says? 2 witnesses. Now watch. John 5, I think it's 5:33. I'm not sure. I think it's 5:33. You have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth. But the testimony is not from man, but I say these things so that you may be saved. Now John 5:36 says, the works testify of me, and the Father who has sent me, he has testified of me. Whoa, he's got some good witnesses. Jesus, we all know Jesus is a genius, but look at this is just spectacular the way he did this. He says, you don't gotta believe me. Moses spoke of me. You don't believe Moses. You're calling Moses, your guy, a liar. You call me a liar, you're gonna do it anyway. But they're calling Moses a liar because you don't believe his writings about me. Now you believe Moses is a liar. Now, he brings in John, right? And so they could say, well, John was a guy, we don't know if he was crazy or not, right? Because didn't they say John, they thought he was out in the wilderness and they didn't necessarily believe John. They ended up beheading him. So they didn't necessarily believe, but then he says, And the Father who has sent me, he has testified of me. Now he's got God as a witness. Now what are you going to say? They got a big problem now because not only do they have Moses as an accuser, they have God. Not only the guy they look to, they got their boss accusing them. And also testifying. God is going to testify on behalf of Jesus, right? He already has. He sent the book of the law to Moses, and now Moses is accusing you. So we'll head on down to. So Jesus has laid out charges, evidence, and now he's going to tell them, among many times, I'm just going to use one or two verses about this, that they're going to be judged. Right? So John 8:26 says, I have many things to speak and to judge concerning you. Jesus told them, you guys are coming after, you're judging me, but I'm telling you, I have many things to judge concerning you. You don't even see the trial. I'm laying it out. Jesus is laying it out for them right now. They still don't realize they're in trouble. If they did, once he laid out all this evidence, woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, once he laid out all this evidence, told them they were murderers and liars and they steal and all that, don't you think they would shut up? Like, this is a good time to be quiet. It's not a good time to, you want to go on the offensive against me? I'm telling you before you even, this is before they actually have seized Jesus, all this is going on. Their trial already started. They do not know. You see how blind they are? They do not know. The trial of Jesus was illegal in every sense of man's justice. Was illegal in Jewish law. No trial was to be held in feast time. The Mishnah, the Sanhedrin, chapter 4, verse 1 says, they shall not judge on the eve of the Sabbath, nor that of any festival. Jesus' trial was held during the Passover's festival, and in the middle of the night, which is another violation of Jewish law. You have to have the trial during the daytime so everybody can see what you're doing. Now, mind you, like I will still stick to, this is just prophecy being fulfilled. It's not a trial in any sense of the word. At least not any kind of a legal trial. Jesus is tried in the worst way possible. Number two, the process was unjust. The Sanhedrin were supposed to be impartial judges in a capital case, listening to charges and weigh evidence fairly, like our Supreme Court. But in this case, the Sanhedrin are the one making the charges. They come from the Jewish leader. The prosecutor makes the charges, but he's not the judge. Think of how corrupt this is. Imagine the judge coming out of the bench, leading the prosecution, then jumping back on the bench and saying, okay, I'm going to weigh the evidence.
After you just made the accused.
You're not even having a trial. It's not a trial. Come on. That's about as corrupt as you can get. A lot of other things. So, beatings before and during the supposed trial happened. Then, like I said, they threw rocks at him before. That was Stony, they tried. They actually beat him before. Remember, they were beating him when he was arrested. That is automatic. You get beat. You could murder 10 people in our justice system. Murder 10 people. If they slap you, you go free. That's it. If they prove any type of brutality, you go free. He was beat beforehand, and he wasn't actually even really legally allowed. He was just beat and taken. So, so Luke 22:63 says, now the men who were holding Jesus in custody were mocking him and beating him. Verse 65 says, they were blaspheming against him and slandering him. Nowadays, you, a police officer, you can't say anything. You can't, they gotta be completely, but look what they've done to him. The use of witnesses was unjust. The details were all over the place. They were all telling different stories. Perfect for a prosecution witness too, is to tell different stories. It's like this. So I'm on charges. I'm sitting there and, yeah, okay. Guy gets up on the witness stand and he says, he stole a car. I know it was a car that he stole. And the other guy gets up there and says, no, he stole the horse. That's what this is. Now, if you're on the jury and you say, well, which did he steal? Well, he stole the horse car. I mean, that's what they did. When they couldn't come up with nothing, it's like they went to that. All the stories, they were false. The details, and they lobbied testimony and false witness. Oh, and by the way, we'll get to it in a minute. There's a bribery charge that's going to be coming up against these guys. In fact, why don't I read off the list of charges right now? These are just some of the ones I can come up with that these religious thugs, you might say, have done. Assault with a deadly weapon, blackmail on Pilate, bribery, false arrest, I can't pronounce this word, subordinate perjury. They basically went out and coerced people into lying at a trial. Criminal aiding and abetting, Judas. They pay him to commit a crime, bribery, but it's criminal because he's a criminal because he lied in a capital case, which you know with the Jews, if you lie in a capital case, you get executed. That's their law. Prosecutorial misconduct, jumping back and forth to the bench. Like I said, like they're gonna prosecute a case they're judging. That's all time, and you can't use perjured testimony. All of that. Conspiracy to murder, conspiracy to have a criminal. What do you call that? Criminal. Anyway, the RICO Act, and last but not least, first-degree murder. Those would be all the charge. Some of them, not including all their own law. This would just be charges that would come up today on these guys if this happened today. So it's not like they could say, well, we really didn't do anything wrong. It's, how about this? How about you just name the stuff you did right with this trial? Because you didn't do any. There was really there was only actually one part of this trial that was right. Only one little thing. When Herod said, take him back to Pilate. That was the only part that was right. Herod just basically, just take him back to Pilate. That's the only part that you could say was right. I mean, he should have let him go, but we'll just go with that because he can't let him go because we know prophecy has to be fulfilled. Yes?
Can I just insert a question? Were the Jews trying to drum up charges under Roman law or under,
both?
Or other?
Okay, so I'll explain that in a minute let's continue on. So Matthew 26:59-61 says, now the chief priests and the whole council kept trying to obtain false testimony against Jesus so that they might put him to death. They did not find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. So what they did was they produced liars, basically, and guess what? They couldn't even believe what they said. The liars that they found, they couldn't even believe it. Isn't that what it sounds like? Many false witnesses came forward, but you couldn't put them to death because the false testimony wouldn't do it. It's like you went in there and said, well, what did he do? Did he blaspheme? No, well, he said some stuff. Even their lies, they couldn't put him, their lies weren't good enough to put him to death, right? Isn't that what he's saying here? You couldn't find any, though many false witnesses, they don't have the testimony. They can't even get these guys to lie right. At least that's what it sounds like to me. So, then there's bribery by the council to Judas to the chief priest. Matthew 26:15 says, and said, what are you willing to give me to betray him to you? And they weighed out 30 pieces of silver to him. That's bribery. You can't go buy. They don't do that. You don't. Now, we have bribery in our justice system all the time. It's called when you negotiate your testimony in lieu of not going to jail. It's a form of bribery. Now, they get away with it because no cash changes hands. Bribery has to be some kind of thing of value, of possession value is bribery. It's not, they can trade jail time for your testimony.
So freedom isn't bribery.
Huh?
Freedom is not bribery.
Not the way, if they do it correctly, but it can be. But if you're willing to talk, they can drop the charges against you in lieu of testimony. Now, where it gets complicated is if they tell you they're going to relocate you, because now you're getting something of value out of it. That's a whole, and trust me, every time somebody testifies, they get, let's just say you have like a case where you call in an expert witness, first thing is going to come up, any defense attorney is going to ask them how much you got paid. How much you got paid? How often do you do this? They bring that up every single time. A lot of times the judge won't let them do it, but a lot of times he will. Because basically, they're going to say anything they want. What they're trying to point out is they'll sell anything they want for money. And we realize these guys will do it too. They bribed. You got to realize, these are not only the church leaders, but aren't they also the Sanhedrin, the guy who's supposed to run the justice system? They're bribing a witness. They're bribing a guy to turn somebody in. They're bribing him. So they bought testimony, which means, now, okay, so now we're going to move on to, they bought the testimony, which means, which they would admit was wrong. Now watch this. Matthew 27:6, they're going to admit to their wrongdoing in a sense here. Now follow me here. The chief priest took the pieces of silver and said, it is not lawful to put them into the temple treasury, since it is the price of blood. Didn't you guys just admit what you were doing was wrong? You can't put the money back into the temple. You can't put the money into the temple. Right? Well, first of all, I have a question where you got the money to begin with. Did you steal it from the temple? Because you can't steal money from the temple to bribe a witness or take money. In our law, that would be misappropriation of funds. You can't do that, right? But I don't know what anybody thinks, but aren't they admitting they did wrong right here? And I'm going to tell you something. Let's just say they say, well, it's the price of blood, and even if they're not admitting they're wrong, they're certainly saying it's the price of blood. We shouldn't do this kind of stuff, right? At minimum. Did this change them, the admission of guilt? No, absolutely not. Watch what happens a little bit later. Matthew 28:12 says, and when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave large sum of money to the soldiers and said, you are to say his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep, and if this should come up to the governor's ears, we will win him over and keep you out of trouble. What does that sound like? It sounds to me like we'll bribe whenever we feel like it. We're going to bribe you guys, again, after we just said it was the price of blood, and we probably shouldn't do this. And once again, where did they get this money? They steal this too, or borrow it, or whatever they did to do it, get it? They didn't say where they get the money, but it does say, and if this should come to the governor's ears, we will win him over. How about this? We will lie as much as we have to. Isn't that in a way what he's saying? We will win him over. We will lie as much as we have to and keep you out of trouble. So obviously what you did, lying to the governor, is a crime. But we're going to get you out of it. And we're going to do it. We're going to win him over. It sounds to me like he's saying, by any means necessary, we're going to make sure you're okay. It doesn't sound good to me. It sounds to me like they admitted guilt, refused the money to the temple, no repentance, and within a week they did it again. That sounds to me almost like they're practicing this kind of thing. And it doesn't seem to be the only time it's ever happened, right? These guys, Jesus has said, you've been liars and murderers, and all these things have been going on for a while. Might have been going on for a long time because the patience of God, remember, 400 years, no word from God, and Jesus comes and everything wrong. You think these guys started it right when Jesus came? I don't think so. I think it's been going on long before Jesus was born. These guys have been doing it for a while. Their criminal history, it didn't start. Jesus showed up and we just said, oh, we're just going to commit every crime. Really? Is that what happened? I don't think so. I think it's been going on a long time. I think God said, back in the days of Noah, God said, every intent of a man's heart is evil, including you guys. And they get called out on it. They get accused. They get charges. They get evidence. The conviction process wasn't just. First, a vote was needed. Anytime that the Jews had a capital crime, you were supposed to have a vote. The vote had to be unanimous. Also, first, the vote had to be from youngest to oldest, so there was no pressure on the youngest to vote the way of the older, more experienced people. That was all not done. For execution, the sentence had to be unanimous, so no vote takes place, and at least 2 of the Sanhedrin would have objected. Nicodemus in John 7:51 says, our law does not judge a man unless it first hears from him and knows what he is doing, does it? He's asking them, he's telling them, look, our law doesn't allow you to do this, what you want to do. You first have to hear from the man. Wasn't Jesus silent most of the time? Didn't say anything? And Joseph of Arimathea, we're going to go to Luke 23:50 says, and a man named Joseph, who was a member of the council, he was a member of these guys, a good and righteous man, verse 51 said, he had not consented to their plan and action. There's your one dissenting vote, and actually 2 with Nicodemus, and it has to be unanimous. That don't sound unanimous to me. It sounds to me like these 2 guys were voting no, and guess what? So we ain't even going to have the vote. Because you 2 are going to vote no. So we'll forget about that. We don't need that. We don't need that vote. So, let's talk a little bit about, let's go to the next one. Okay, so the sentencing was unjust. Jewish law required that a sentence of death be carried out by stoning, and that the stoning was to be done by accusers. The judgment had to sit on the table for 3 days, a delay that was supposed to give any other witnesses with exculpatory evidence time to come forward. After 3 days, the Sanhedrin would reassemble, read out the man's name, his crime, the verdict, the sentence, the witnesses' names, and then call out once more for any witnesses that might have some exonerating evidence. Only then would they carry out the stoning. Care to guess how many of these steps happened to Jesus?
Very little.
0. None. None. They went around their whole Jewish law. And remember, the Sanhedrin come from back in the day of Moses, right? Levitical laws where they chose 70. It's back, somewhere back there is where they chose them. Not those guys, but I mean the whole system. It goes back to somewhere in the day of Moses. I would have to look it up, but it goes back that far where they had a council. And the Jews are using that. But we can look, I'll look that up later. I know it's there, but basically they haven't gone for any, yes sir, by any of the rules.
Actually, I read that the Sanhedrin system was probably set up around the Persian period.
Yeah, but it was set up, but it comes from
Numbers 11. 16.
Thank you. It comes from back then. I'm saying it, I don't know when it was set up, but I know it comes from back then. That system came from. Is that correct, Kenny? It does come from back there.
Yeah.
So I want to read you a couple things about what's going on here. Where Moses, the law of Moses, as we're going to call it right now, is going to trap these guys. Leviticus 19:11 says, "You shall not steal falsely, nor lie to one another." Well, that went out the window. "You shall do no injustice in judgment." This is why Moses is accusing them. Right here. You shall do no. They just did it. I just read it to you what they did. "But you were to judge your neighbor fairly." You think that happened? 18. "You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people." Well, that's strike 3. Now, here's a warning from Jesus to this, guys. Long before this all starts, Jesus is going to give them a warning, right? Watch this. Now, mind you, this is not directly to them, but they're always around when Jesus is speaking, all the time. They're hiding, they're there. So he says this, Matthew, I think it's 7:1, "Do not judge, so that you will not be judged." They should have listened to that, because it's coming from them. "For in the way you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you." Now, here's the only part that really was a little different. They judged Jesus completely unjustly, lied, cheated, bribed, whatever else. We could go into all that. But Jesus judged them by a righteous measure when they judged him unrighteously. Jesus still kept his stand. He could have, he said, "I can judge you by the same measure. You can be judged by the same measure you judge." So, well, he could have made up charge. Jesus wouldn't do that. But he could have. Isn't that what it says? The same measure. "For in the way you judge," these guys were crooks. They deserved to be judged the same way, but Jesus didn't do that. Jesus gathered all the evidence, proper way, did all the things he was supposed to do. Now, Pilate's final consent was unjust. As we know, this whole thing's unjust. I'm just and here's what I'm trying to point out here. And this is what's going to come up in a minute here. All of these things they're accusing Jesus of, they're the ones that are guilty. They're basically testifying all of this. All of these things is testifying against them. None of it is testifying against. They're the ones guilty of blasphemy. Jesus is the Son of God, and that's one of the charges that they leveled was he says he's the Son of God and he's not. Uh-oh, blasphemy. You're in trouble, guys. You say he blasphemed by saying that, but you blasphemed by saying he's not.
So they're blaspheming about him blaspheming.
So Pilate's final consent was unjust. Pilate knows Jesus is innocent. Luke 23:4 says, "Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, not clouds, I find no guilt in this man." That's pretty much a statement. I find no guilt. Nothing you say is correct. Luke 23:14 and 15 says, "Having examined him before you," meaning before you guys, I examined him, and I listened to you spout off, right? "I have found no guilt in this man regarding his charges which you make against him." Now these charges, these were not only, right, like you said, Roman charges were there too, and the Jewish charges at this point. But they're going to twist Pilate's arm. This is where I talked about the extortion and blackmail. This is what they're going to do to Pilate. It's coming up. For has Herod sent him? For he sent him back to us, nothing worthy of death. What? 4 more verses confirm this. I'm not going to read them to you, but they're there. John 18:38, if you want to read it. John 19:4-6. Matthew 27:24. Mark 15:14. Jewish leaders are blackmailing Pilate. Okay, so I'm going to go out of the Bible here for a minute. I'm going to go to a guy named Josephus. Anybody ever heard of him? Wrote a lot of things. He was a Jew, wrote a lot of Jewish writings, a lot of things about the Bible, a lot of things about Moses. They give him credit as a pretty accurate historian. So Josephus recounts Pilate entering Jerusalem, and he flew banners with the image of the emperor against Jewish law. Jews protested. Pilate wanted to kill them and said the Jews said they would rather die than submit, and they got down on their knee, and they told Pilate to go ahead. Pilate didn't do it. The next offense, Pilate stole temple funds to build an aqueduct. The protesters, they were in a no aqueducts protest. So, yeah. They came out. Pilate had soldiers dress up as Jews and kill the Jews. And this was not all the massacres. Pilate had other ones that he did. And there is one verse in the Bible that kind of highlights this. Luke 13:1 says, these were reported, and Pilate knew one more, and I didn't read the verse. But I'm not going to read the verse. You can read it on your own. But these were reported, and Pilate knew one more, and he was done in Judah. John 19:12 recounts this blackmail. Pilate tries to release the Jews, and they say, you are no friend of Caesar. Pilate knows if he releases Jesus at this point, they're going to tell Caesar, because they have before. Pilate was already on probation, according to Josephus, from Tiberius Caesar. He was already on probation. One more time, he's up on the cross. He's the one going to get crucified. And they make Pilate out to be a clown, right? But let's just look at Pilate for about 30 seconds. Pilate was a general. He was skilled in military. He was also skilled in finance and everything, because that's why they sent him there to run it. It was no joke. Pilate wasn't a joke. But the Jews made a joke out of him, right? And it's all part of God's plan, because we see now that God's plan is, Pilate, you're going to be able to be extorted and blackmailed to not be able to let Jesus go. Because Pilate wanted to let him go. And what's going to stop him? Well, the Jews got something to hold over him, all part of God's plan. Jesus isn't going free, no matter what. It's a prophecy that's going to be fulfilled. Yes, sir.
Great point. So I think a good way to look at it is, as we have so-called sanctuary cities, Tiberius allowed the Jews to have their own sanctuary city with their laws and their king, which was Herod, who could have pardoned Jesus. So trying to drum up those charges was under Jewish law.
Yeah, and then they went, yes.
But when they came to Pilate, and Pilate's wife intervened, said, have nothing to do with that, man. It's not about Roman law. Let them take care of it themselves. And then Herod refuted that and said, I don't want to deal with it. So when they brought him back to Pilate, they had Jewish laws they wanted to present to Tiberius. And Pilate said, no, you take it under your own law. And as you were saying earlier, right? So it's kind of convoluted, because Pilate's saying, that's on your side of the fence. You have a sanctuary city allowed by Tiberius. And they said, no, we want to do it. We want you to take care of it. And then when he refused to, then they said, well, let's throw out, like you just said, a Roman law. He claims to be a king. But wasn't Herod a king?
There's so many wrong things here, like I said before, you can't really list them all. The wrong here is so incredible. But the whole point of this is that God is doing two things here. He's having two trials. The Jews don't realize it. The people don't realize it. They think they're good. They think they killed this guy, they're okay. Mike points out this Bible study. You have to listen to this to kind of get the picture here of what we're talking about with the Jews and with they think they're friends of God and they're not, right? They think they're righteous, they're not. This Bible study, I listened to it today, and it's going to talk about, he's going to make it clear about whether or not you're a friend to God, whether or not these religious leaders, a lot of that's in there. He's going to point out the things. You should listen to this. It's going to make a lot of this clearer, that these guys, they're not who they're saying they are. They're simply not. They may even believe they are, think they are, but they're not. Mike points this out in this study very good. Better than I could put it here. He puts about an hour into this, and it's very good, and you will see where, and this has to do with everybody, could have to do with everybody here, maybe it doesn't. But some people will claim an allegiance to God, and they will not have it. And he points this out, and he points out how they fall into that trap. There's a lot of things in there. And it's really good because when you put the Pharisees and these guys up here against this study, you're going to see about what these guys, what's going on. You're going to see. It's all there. So, okay, so mind you, all of this is evidence of the guilt of the Jews and Pilate and Herod. All these things we just went over. As they all know Jesus is innocent. All of them. You could say, well, the Jews say he blasphemed, and maybe he did. Maybe he wasn't the Son of God. Maybe they truthfully believed he wasn't. Okay, well, if that's true, why didn't they have a trial? If that's true, why didn't they have a vote? If that's true, why did you beat him before he was arrested? Why did you try to stop? Why did you try to kill him without anything? If it's true that he truthfully was blaspheming and you could be put to death under Jewish law, then why didn't you do it the right way? There's a problem somewhere. They didn't have the, whatever it might be, they didn't believe, obviously, somewhere along the line, there was something wrong. Now, to certain people, Pilate believed he was innocent. I'm not sure, if they knew he was innocent, they would have had to believe in him, correct? But they didn't believe in him, so maybe in their eyes he wasn't innocent. But if he wasn't innocent, why you have, it's so convoluted. Everything that they do, and you know what? All this spells is this. You guys are nothing but crooks. You did everything crooked. It has, whether guilt or innocence, I don't even think they cared about that one way or the other. They didn't care at all. They're crooks. They're doing what crooks do. Crooks don't go by the law. That's why they're crooks. The word criminal has to do with law breaking. These guys are nothing but criminals. I mean, if you can't see it, their religious thing is a fraud. And it's been a fraud for a while. And God finally says, I'm going to address it. All of you. What do you think's going to happen to us? Later, God's going to address it with us too. He's going to say, a lot of people sitting out there in churches, you're frauds. A lot of the people standing up at the pulpit, you're frauds. And it's going to be the same trial for them. Maybe not exactly the same way, but they're going to have the same trial. God's gathering evidence now. He's going to open the books, and what's he going to find? And he said every word that comes out of your mouth. That's why earlier was keep your mouth shut. That was a good advice. Keep your mouth shut. Because you just convict yourself. So, now we're going to get to, I've got to go because I'm getting close to time. So, Pilate's going to attempt to release Jesus. And once again, the Jews are going to testify himself here by choosing Barabbas to go free. Jesus' words again, they're going to show, watch this. They say, so the crowd and everybody else says, so Barabbas was a murderer and a convicted murderer, insurrectionist, and convicted of robbery. So the Jews, and they want him to release Barabbas. They choose Barabbas over Jesus. Now, here's a couple things. Why would they choose Barabbas over Jesus? Here, we're going to go back a little bit. John 8:41 says, you are doing the deeds of your father. Let me ask a question, and we're going to get to this, but, first let me go here. John 8:44, you are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer. Barabbas is a murderer. We'll get to this. Now, I have a couple questions I can't answer. Maybe somebody can help me with this. So, did Satan want Jesus dead? Well, I say yes. And Satan constantly wanted to destroy Jesus, but not for him to die on the cross. Dying on the cross would be a victory. He wanted him to die before that, right? Didn't he try to kill him? Herod killed all of them. Out in the wilderness, he tried to tempt him so he wasn't sinless. So, if Jesus died by any other means other than the cross, sinless and unjustified, it would be a victory for Satan, right? If he wasn't sinless, it'd be a victory for Satan. You can't have a sacrifice that's not sinless. That was God said to be sinless sacrifice, right? Perfect. He had to die on the cross. If he died in a car accident, or better yet, a donkey accident, back then it would have been, then that would be, if he killed him before, that'd be okay. He'd be fine. And if it was a justifiable death, the death, if it was justified, it would be a victory for Satan. Because we would say, well, he had a right to kill him, that he was blaspheming, right? If they would have been justified. Now, we'll get into that in just a second. So, Satan cannot see the future as he is a created being and not omniscient like God. He's not like God. But he is highly intelligent and experienced, using observation and reasoning from cause to effect to make accurate guesses and predictions. Satan, what he's saying here is, by the past, Satan can predict the future. But you're walking in a straight line, and every 10th step, you put your foot out. He can count 10 steps and go, he's going to do it again. After a while, he figures you out what it is. So, and he has limited knowledge. And Satan's knowledge of the future is what has been revealed. He is limited by time and space, unlike God. He's in a box, right? Observation and insight. Watching humans thousands of years, Satan can anticipate actions and plan accordingly. By Psalm 22, Satan would gather the Messiah would be crucified, because in Psalm 22 he goes over what's going to happen to Jesus. Satan would have read this, know Jesus was going to be crucified, and know that's not a good thing for him, correct? So the call for release of Barabbas would be to save their brother. The Jews, remember, say, okay, so Satan's their father. Who would be their brother? Barabbas was this guy. He was an anomaly, right? So they were going to release their brother. Now, why do I say? Well, their brother, so to speak. I'm saying in those terms. Well, why? As Satan is their father, Barabbas would be their brother, right? And so they would, if Satan, let's get to the questions, because these are going to be the ones that tell you where I'm at with this. I can't answer these questions. There's 3 questions. Did Satan cut his losses and influence the Jews to release Barabbas? Because Barabbas was there, and you say, well, we want him, we don't want, Satan would say, I don't want Jesus crucified. But at this point in time, is he going, I know it's going to happen, and release, we'll take Barabbas because I get a murderer out of the deal at least. I still lose, but I get a murderer. Did he cut his losses and release Barabbas? Because he already knows that it's to the point where Jesus is going on the cross. Right? He's already there. His last thing, Pilate says, no, we don't want to release it. Jesus is going to the cross. Did he cut his losses? I can't answer that. Did the Jews, choose Barabbas on their own? And may or may not have gone against their father's desire? Satan, did they go against his desire? I don't know the answer to that. Did Satan simply see the plan and accept defeat and do nothing? And just go, well, I'm going to sit back and watch what happens because I can't change it. I don't know the answer to any of those 3 questions. If anybody does, go ahead and answer. But I don't know the answer to any of those. So, now we're going to go to, very easy question, was Jesus murdered? Now, Jesus was an unjust killing by all standards, even secular. Therefore, murder, as an unjust or unlawful killing, is generally considered murder or criminal homicide. Murder is the unlawful, unintentionally killing with malice. Now, the Bible does not use the specific murder to describe his death of Jesus, but it describes his death as an unjust killing, a violent execution that was both a human crime and a divine sacrifice. Now you have the human crime and the divine sacrifice, once again showing that God can do 2 things that are diametrically opposed. People say, well, he couldn't be murdered if he sacrificed himself, but he can't. Because you have the other side of this where God's going to say, the same as you have 2 trials going on. The same as we can feel the joy and the agony of the cross at the same time, right? He's doing the same thing here. God is going to charge the Jews with the crime, because it is a crime. But he also has a divine sacrifice at the same time. Now, this point can be argued, and there'll be people that say that it's not that way. But we know, at least we can look at it and say, there was a crime here. Anybody that looks at this, if you don't see the crime here. Now, was it murder? Yes, Mike.
Well, I was just thinking, going back a couple things that you said, Pilate's wife played a critical point in all this, and she's missed. Who gave her the dream? It only came from two sides.
Yes.
And then you can figure out what the intent of the dream was to do.
Well, I'm talking about God's intent here.
Well,
Yeah,
when she told Pilate have nothing to do with that man, was that from who's trying to implement that, the intentions of that Pilate would have nothing to do with this? Would it be Satan or God? Because you just mentioned that. It would.
Like I said, there's some things that are very hard to answer here.
Well, it'd be Satan
Yeah.
involved because
God,
if Pilate went back to the Jews and said, hey, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that and I'm going to death. What would have been the outcome? He had to have been
Okay, so
found
he was
out.
still involved. Thank you.
Yeah,
Because like I
still
said,
involved.
there are some questions that was really hard to
He's
answer in
up
this.
until the last second, actually.
Now, okay, so Jesus is going to point about the 3 times the hatred that they have for him and his Father. He says, and they hated me without a cause. John 15, I believe it's 15:3. But we know that Jesus was hated by all these people. So I got to move on because I'm running out of time and I got a little bit more to go. Divine sacrifice. Jesus was not a helpless victim, rather willingly laid down his life. John 10:17 says, for this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it up again. No one has taken it from me, but I have laid it down on my own initiative. So, and Jesus foretells in Matthew, I'm not going to read it because of time, 20:18, he's going to talk about, he's going to go to Jerusalem and be crucified and raised up after 3 days, right? They're going to hand him over to Gentiles to be crucified and scourged. He chose Jerusalem knowing he would be slain, so he voluntarily went. He could have just said no, right? Not gone. In the trials, he's declared innocent. He has 6 trials, basically. Innocent 4 times, no convictions. Okay? Beaten, scourged, and crucified. Judgment. Jesus was innocent. Chief priests, Pharisees, Sadducees, Herod, all guilty. All had a chance to go on their knees and worship Jesus. Every single one of them could have said at any time, this man is innocent. He is God. He's our Savior. I'm down on my knees. Forgive me, Christ. Guess what? Case closed for them. They're fine. They don't do that. Scripture shows, as we've been through, Jesus warned them, named charges, gave ample evidence, told of coming judgment. Now the conclusion, 8:27. Therefore I said, John 8:27, therefore I said to you that you will die in your sins unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins. Guess what he just gave them? He just gave them their judgment. They've proven they don't believe him. They charged with blasphemy. He said, we don't believe you. You're not the Son of God. There's your conviction. Right? What they thought was the trial of Jesus was a trial hidden from them. It was theirs. Now, Matthew 15:14, let's describe these guys. Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind. And if a blind man, if a blind man guides a blind man, both fall into a pit. What pit is he talking about? What is hell called? Isn't it called? You see, Jesus has laid out everything for these guys, but they're so hard-headed they can't see what he's doing. God has planned a masterful thing here. These guys' trial, every bit of the way, has been piling dirt on themselves. And they keep doing it. They don't quit all the way through it. They missed that the crucifixion was a prophecy, which they should have known had they been reading the Bible, right? They knew, and they should have known a foregone conclusion in the events leading up to it. Now, the Christian, we look at this as Christians, we're going to say, right, Jesus died for the sins of all mankind. So they're trying to say you take the Jews out of the equation because Jesus had to die for the sins of mankind, for everybody, from the beginning, right? But God says, okay, that's fine for you, but these guys are still on the hook for their crimes. You don't get away from a crime because he has another purpose. He can have two purposes. What did the flood do? The flood destroyed the bad, and what did it do? It cleansed the earth at the same time. Two things. He can do this. He's God. Okay, so they still have their crimes and sins to answer for. God's plan of the divine sacrifice completed does not change their thoughts or intentions and the judgment thereof. I'm going to paraphrase this. Hebrews 4 says, for the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword and piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit of both joints and marrow, and to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Even if it had gone the other way, these guys, their thoughts and intentions of the heart were to kill Jesus and to kill him without using with breaking every law. That was their intention of their heart. They can be judged on that alone. They don't actually have to do it, right? They just have to have it in their heart. Well, they did. Divine sacrifice doesn't change their doesn't change the human kind in their thoughts, intentions, actions in their heart. They unlawfully and unjustly killed Christ. It was a murder, which they are guilty for. You already see it. So now we're almost at the end. I'm sorry I ran over. 50 days after Passover, the day of Pentecost marks the descent of the Holy Spirit upon Jesus' disciples in Jerusalem, of all places, right? This is a place where Jesus was crucified, right? A lot of guilty people. Now, 3,000 later are going to get that day. Well, some of them might have been the ones in the crowd. Now, here's my point here. A rushing wind, tongues of fire enabled believers to speak in foreign languages, marking the birth of the church, fulfilling Christ's promises and God's plan for redemption. The same place all this bad was done, God turned it into what? Good. Watch. In closing, if you take all these things in consideration, Romans 8:28 is appropriate, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Look what he did. He took all of this, all this evil, all these things, and he worked it all together for good, for those who love God. These other guys, what happened to them? They got sentenced, right? The pit. They got sent. The sins, they're going to die in their sins. These guys got what they deserved. And the same thing's going on now. By the way, Romans 8:28, that last verse is going to be the next First Friday. That's going to be what it's on. That's all I have.
So, Mark,
Yes.
can you tell people where to find, because online it's hard to read that,
Oh,
where to find that Bible study and how to get there?
it's on YouTube, and you punch in God, the Bible, and you.
Without any spaces.
Oh, that I don't know.
Don't put,
Yeah,
no,
spaces.
I did this the other night. So, no spaces, just God, the Bible, and you on YouTube, and it'll bring up the channel.
It should. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, but don't put
Sorry.
spaces.
Because I'm going to tell you something. I really believe this is kind of important that you get a picture of what the friend of God, and he's going to tell you about these religious leaders. It does a lot in understanding who these guys, the Pharisees, were. Look, most of these guys, with the exception of maybe Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, these were bad guys. They weren't good guys. And you saw all the charges I laid out. If you could go through it, look, the scourging of Jesus was done with the flail. What do they call it?
Oh, the cat and...
Yeah.
That's
That's assault with a deadly weapon when you don't have any reason to do it. If I took a bat and I hit somebody, that's assault with a deadly weapon. It's not legal. None of this was legal. think I pretty much showed you that, and I didn't even go into all the things they'd done wrong. I only mentioned what we had time for.
And-
There's so much more than they did wrong in all this that's just, it's ridiculous to the point of all I can say about these guys is at one time I was a little bit of a criminal, and these guys, they thought of thuggery that I didn't even come close to thinking of. I mean, they got things going on that are unreal.
Well, the only other thing I wanted to mention was when it comes, to Satan, because I do agree that Satan has his desires in outcome of things, and God has his, and yet I just want to be careful. Satan is a created being. Satan is a created creature. Satan is an angel. He is not omnipresent. He is not omnipotent, and he's not omniscient. He doesn't possess these characters. So while a lot of time we're looking at things and what's Satan doing behind the scenes, so much of what goes on is when men are carried away by their own flesh and are pursuing their own. That's why Jesus said in John 8, you do the things of your father. You follow him, you think like him, you lie like him because he's your father. Satan's one guy. He can be with one person at one time. He can't possess numerous people. He's a one-guyer, and yet he has incredible power and incredible influence. But I think at certain stages, like all the Sanhedrin, all the Pharisees are standing before Pilate. They're saying, we want him dead. Well, does Satan want him dead?
That's
maybe not, but it's outside of Satan's ability to influence because Satan's one guy that's not omnipotent, and the flesh is just leading the way with all these Pharisees and all these Sadducees just going for it.
I did have some problems with dealing with some of the roles of, let me tell you, one thing for sure, that there's a lot of theologians, I read probably 10 different ones, and there are 10 different takes. Really, there are 10 different takes of what each one feels exactly what was going on where. And it took a lot of deciphering, a lot more reading, a lot more going over the same things to come to some of the determinations that I came to. But in general, the point of this was there was a trial that they did not see that God had planned, and another plan going on that they had no idea, and they walked right into it. With no hesitation, they walked into it, showing these guys, obviously, their prayers weren't getting heard from God, because if they were, you think God's going to let them go in this direction? Yeah. I mean, a righteous man, is he going to get used in that way to do all those things? Is God going to take a righteous man and have him murder, have him beat, have him do this, have him lie and do all? Is that what God does? Does he take a guy and make all those things out of him? No. These guys went out on their own, and they were bad guys. I mean, what else could you conclude that these are evil men?
Here's what I love about this whole study that you just gave. It ties so well into what you taught. If you guys missed on Wednesday, you guys should really tune in this last Wednesday to what Mike was teaching. This whole plan of what went on Good Friday, who was in the center the whole time? This was the script. This was the plan. This was Jesus at the center. All these players, all the human players, they were on the outside, and they're all being used, some against their will, being used to accomplish what? The plan, which has always been and always will be about who? Jesus, right? So it ties beautifully, and I think, to what you taught Wednesday. Jesus is always in the center. The plan is the plan, and God is sovereign over it all.
But if not, maybe necessarily that. Let's say something like that was going on, and it wasn't the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And all those men hit their knees and asked for forgiveness and repented of their sins, they would have been forgiven.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. As long as God, who judges the heart and
right.
sees,
and it was pure,
knows the truth, and he's just. Yeah, of course. Is that his plan?
No, that wasn't his plan.
Not on that day.
Well,
maybe another day,
It's funny too, because after the whole kind of the dust settles and Jesus is on the cross, everyone kind of leaves, but there's one person who was still active after everyone else leaves, and it's Satan still trying to foil the plan. Could I read it? After everyone leaves, it says in 32 of John, the soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man and the other man who was crucified with him, but coming to Jesus, who was already dead. They didn't break his leg. So that was fulfilled, not a bone of his body. He was still trying to get Jesus' leg broken.
That's why I asked those
before
questions.
he
Those questions were
And what
because
would have happened?
it's a lot. There's
So what
so
would have
much
happened
there.
if the legs got broken?
Everything's off.
Done.
Everything's off.
He's not the Christ. Yeah.
Everything's off.
There's, you know,
He didn't stop.
there's so much to it. I look at the releasing of Barabbas, and I'm like this: how could Satan cast out Satan? Your house divided. I'm saying, it told you guys were murderers, so you took the murderer because that's like your buddy. You can have him. I think when Barabbas probably came out and everything, they probably gave him a robe and a crown and said, "You're a robber and a murderer. Well, that's the same as us. So come on, join the crowd. We're going to go out. We're going to keep going." They didn't seem to. I don't know if any of those Jewish leaders ever repented. It says that on the day of Pentecost, right, then there's 3,000 souls, right, were baptized. Some of them were probably in that crowd, right? I'm not sure if it was any Pharisees or any of those guys. Did they leave and do it? It does not say. At least not that I can find. It doesn't say. But there were 3,000 people, and I imagine some of them were in that crowd that were calling for Jesus to be crucified and decided, no, this ain't good. Now the question is, you know, how God can, like, basically block, were those people all blocked from, you know, did God say, no, you're not, you're called, but you're not going to be chosen no matter what, because this is what you did? I don't know that. And that's an interesting thing of whether or not, you know, and Pilate eventually committed suicide, as same as, I didn't get to this, but Judas goes and commits suicide, right? Because he eventually comes to the conclusion he wants to give the money back because Jesus isn't a bad guy. Pilate says he's innocent, ends up committing suicide because what? Possibly, we don't know why Pilate committed suicide. It's kind of unclear. There's many reasons given. Could it have been that the guilt of putting an innocent man to death, the same as they both ended up, remember who has the greater sin? Well, they both ended up doing the same thing. I don't know if that's connected, but you could think, you could come to I'm not sure, because it doesn't say what happened to Pilate, why he did what he did, why he committed suicide. So, but Pilate was on the chopping block for a lot of things, you know, and most of him, like, once again, he was a criminal too. This was all, everybody in this picture was basically, they were all criminals. So you had one big crime, and it simply shows again, if you went through this and you said, who out of all this is saved? All these people that were all involved in this, and you go, wow, it's just like none of them. Like maybe Joseph of Arimathea, maybe Nicodemus, maybe none.
It's funny how God really doesn't deal with the 80-90% of the secular world. It's Satan is in control of that last few percentage of the religious world. That's where all his action.
You know, I could see. So God sees, he knows this, he made the prophecy, he knows all this is going to happen. And I could see him going, the only ones that said he's innocent was the Gentile. And going, I'm sick of you Jews. I'm like, I've had it with you guys. Look what you guys have done this from, you know, he's going back and, you know, that's why he let the Gentile, because isn't all the things on the prophets, he's always mad at him. And now you murdered my son. I know that there's a twofold thing. It's a divine sacrifice, but I showed you it was a murder, right? By all legal purposes, it was a murder of divine sacrifice. But if you're God and you're looking at it, you go like this, you guys have finally done it. You've done everything. I've been on you for so long, and now you murdered my son. Even though God would justify this because he had to come and he had to die on the cross. Yes, but there's still a human crime here, and they did it. Look at all the other things they've done. I mean, no wonder he let the Gentiles in, because for thousands of years he's been like kind of sick of these guys. I mean, think about it. He's killed off. How many of them did he kill off? The Jews. Well, Noah was, right? Noah would be a Hebrew, right? Because it goes all the way. So he killed 7 or 8, could be 10 billion.
Jesus actually wasn't murdered because he was crucified, technically.
Well,
But when they came to break his legs, he had already said, I give up my
Yeah.
spirit.
What I'm saying is, if you looked at it from a,
Yeah,
I mean, they did everything they could to kill him unjustly, and by the definition of what I said was, I'm saying in human terms. If a secular person looked at
On
this,
the
if I was a
human side.
prosecutor, I'd say, you guys murdered that guy, first degree
On the
murder.
human
You
side,
planned
they
it, you
murdered
did it. I mean, yeah, and God's going to judge. Well, how are they going to get judged? They can't get judged as righteous people because they're not. So they're going to get. He was not murdered, but
he was sentenced to be murdered. He was sentenced.
Yeah, 'cause
he could be